Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and it is our Game Week 17 National League preview and predictions that is kindly sponsored by Cards Accepted. Please check the link in the description to get 50% off your card machine. No contracts or monthly fees. So the agenda for tonight's show is as followed. Transfer news. Has been some absolutely mental transfers in this division, including, of course, Sam Clucas, who's made the move to Oldham. We'll be also discussing Oldham as well. Are they in the title race? That's one of the major talking points. And speaking of races, the Moors are on the move at the moment, just outside of the playoffs. Does everyone believe that they'll finish in the playoffs come the end of the season? A full FA Cup review of all the National League sides that were involved, particularly discussing sides that have gone on to progress. There's a few other talking points I want to talk a little bit about the FA Cup too. So before we all get into everything like that, as you can tell, co-host once again, about it must be nearly a month now since I had my regular co-host. We've brought Rob back onto the podcast. Thanks for stepping in, Rob. How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, really good, actually. I took a break from our own podcast, NL Full-Time, this weekend, and the boys did it without me, which was great. And but I've enjoyed the break, and I'm ready to get back and into all things National League now. And a really good night to have the pod, because we've got a couple of interesting transfers this week, and just this evening the announcement of a management team to go to the end of the season with Hartlepool. So I'm sure we've got plenty to chat about, as well as obviously having a pop at the impossible and predicting the weekend scores.
Yeah, it's been going nicely on that side of things for me at the moment. I want to make like a bit of an in-game week kind of bet, if that makes sense. As everyone can see, Paul's made a few comments about it on the podcast when he was last on. This was the last time he was on, which was about 3 weeks ago, and he said that I need a haircut. Now, I don't know what everyone else thinks, but what we'll do, if you beat me this week, Rob, then I cannot get a haircut again. So it's got to get even longer. However, if I beat you this week, I can finally have a haircut, because I'm kind of in denial what I'm going to do with my hair at the moment, as everyone can probably tell. But that's enough of that anyway. So Paul's not with us.
At least you've got hairs to cut.
Yeah, and at least I have. But Paul's not with us this week because he is back in the country, I should say, but he's not feeling well. So Rob's stepping in. He usually beats me on predictions, I'll be honest. I think every time you've come on, you've beat me. So hopefully this week I can kind of change that. I'm kind of in a bit of a more comfortable position now, having 5 points. But no, that's enough of me waffling on now. Good to see a lot of people are joining us tonight. Starting things off with Phil, who's come in and said, "Evening, chaps. Oldham, most definitely in the title race this week, is massively quietly confident we can get something at Barnet." Yeah, that's probably game of the game week. I think, you look at Oldham at the moment, I think they're third in the form table. If you look at that, and you look at Barnet, who are a side that obviously title favourites at the start of the season before a ball was kicked, I think still involved in the title race, but in the form table kind of slipped off in the last couple of weeks. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting game to preview, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I've got it down as one of three, which so I've had a look and finalised all my predictions except for three at the moment, where I'm still just formulating it in my head, and I'm in York against Hartlepool around them at the moment. Perhaps the one least likely amongst that might be Hartlepool to you, but not to me. I watched them play against Aldershot. I know who's in charge. He knows what he's doing, and now he's strengthened his management team. So for that reason, I think they will give York a tough game. But yeah, we'll get to the actual numbers and the predictions in a bit, but I'm just keeping my powder dry on those three games.
Yeah, well, I want to talk a bit about Hartlepool, but something I do want to discuss is the FA Cup and the sides that were involved in the FA Cup. Now, of course, we didn't end up doing a Twitter space last week. I think we were both busy. I don't think I wasn't feeling particularly well, and neither were yourself. So we gave it a miss. But four sides in the National League progressed into the second round. I think we do have to mention three sides were denied a replay. If replays did happen, there'd be three sides that would, of course, have got that replay. That includes Southend United, who would have had a trip to the Valley to play Charlton. Yeah, that's the only, I think, disappointing factor, isn't it? When you're looking at sides like your Maidenheads, your Southend's, who've been denied a replay, because there's a lot of money that they've certainly missed out on there.
Yeah, they have. I have to say, as an overall thing, it's quite disappointing how few National League sides have made it just to the second round this season. We've had some really good numbers in recent seasons, but I think there's some mitigating circumstances. There were some very tough draws, and lots of teams that pushed hard but didn't quite get over the line, and one or two that were on for shocks, like my own team, Aldershot, 1-0 up at half-time at Bradford. But these teams and these managers and these players are in League One, League Two for a reason, and that's because sometimes they can find an extra gear. Sometimes they're just more consistent at what they do. But yeah, fantastic wins for Oldham, for Wealdstone. Dagenham was it, the other one?
Yeah.
And what was really notable as a bit of a theme is they were generally tight for away wins, which is fantastic. They weren't necessarily the games that we thought teams would come through, are they, as well? So, for Wealdstone in particular, what a fillip for them, and we'll come on to talk about them more tonight, I'm sure. But they kept saying, we just need someone to put the ball in the net. And they signed someone. They got one back from injury, and that's what they've done. These tight games now are turning into wins and decent points. And Alex Reid, I think you'd be better off having Paul on here than me for this, but I think he's something like 7 goals already in his first 7 games or so.
Yeah, I think it's actually 4 games he's actually played and 7 goals. So he's got a mental record. To just come into this Wealdstone side, and I think for Wealdstone it did look like a standout signing. I thought when I personally saw him go there, I thought that's you're not going to get a better signing at Wealdstone, in my opinion, considering the position. And, there's a lot of people in this league, or teams, I should say, who would love Alex Reid at the club. I'd love him at Halifax. I think he's a great striker that hasn't got the credit he deserves in the last couple of years. Or I won't say the credit he deserves, because obviously he's struggled to get in the team, so that he doesn't really deserve any credit. But what I will say about him, when he's been at Oldham, he's been very underrated, hardly used, and I think he was wasted there. And I think for him to get a move now into a Wealdstone side that, to be fair, do create chances, it's certainly suiting him. And I think he's showing the National League that he's not done yet, and he's still a quality striker in this division. Of course, Oldham going to Tranmere didn't particularly shock me, that I have to say, them going there. It's a big win for them though to progress into the next round. Wealdstone, like I've mentioned, that will probably be the shock of the round, I'd say. Dagenham going to Crewe, and they're another team for me, Dagenham. You look at them this season, 5th highest goal scorers in the division, 6th best defence, just beating Crewe, who are currently 5th in League Two, yet sit 13th in the National League. They're so inconsistent. It's hard to really say where Dagenham are going to come this season, because for me, I think they've got the quality to really push on this season and get in the playoffs, but consistency just seems to be an issue, and it's been the same thing for a number of years now.
Yes, definitely so. A side very adept at scoring goals, and they can score them from a number of different people in a number of different ways. They've got an absolute class player in Dion Pereira. I don't think there's any doubt about that. If you look at his goals this season, they have been topped up a little bit by penalties, but he's a terrific player. He's got that real touch of almost arrogance about him. It'll remain to be seen over a longer period of time how they do without Josh Rees for a reasonable period now. He's picked up an injury that will keep him out for a little while. But you've got Junior Marias coming back to his best as well. Ryan Hill, other good players, So, fair play. I've got a lot of respect for Ben Strevens, whether it be his latter time at Eastleigh or his time at Dagenham. Both clubs, basically, he's been there when the money's gone. The big money, the big backing that was at Eastleigh before and is to some extent back there now. And the much bigger money that was available at Dagenham until the point he came in. So he's a grafter. He knows this league. He's played this league, and he's one of the more experienced managers at this level now as well. So yeah, I think you're spot on in the fact that they're a little bit inconsistent, but it's a bloody tough league, Luke, isn't it? And you know, it takes something special, like perhaps the Yorks, the Forest Greens, the Barnets, and maybe the Oldhams have got to really grind out consistent wins.
I wouldn't be surprised if Dagenham finished inside the playoffs this season, you know, took that 7th spot. But I also won't be surprised if they ended up finishing 16th, because you just don't know where to really put them. You look at some of the wins they've got, putting 7 past Gates, and I know people say maybe it was a bit of a freak result to put 7 past the side like that, but they still did it. To go to somewhere like Crewe away from home, who were 5th in League Two, and win there just shows that Dagenham have the capabilities, in my opinion, to be a really, really good team in this division. But they're just so inconsistent. If you look at some of the defeats that they've got over the course of the season, those defeats, losing to the likes of Woking, you wouldn't particularly expect them to have gone there. And when you look at Woking struggles at the moment, and to lose to them, to drop points at Maidenhead, you look at these teams and you think, for Dagenham this season, for them to push on, that's where they need to be getting the wins from. And for me, like I said, they're just a very, very hard team to predict at the moment, and be interesting to see how they do over the course of the season. I think the only other concern for them is, because I genuinely do feel there's a lot of good individuals in that side, when January comes around, if Dion Pereira's playing for a mid-table National League club, I'm sure bigger clubs in this division and sides in the league above will be coming in to try and sign him. So we'll have to wait and see what happens at Dagenham. Speaking of Dagenham fans, we've had a Dagenham fan who's come in, John, who said, evening all, good luck to all the teams this weekend. Welcome to the stream, John. Good to see you here. We've also got Jack, who's an Oldham fan. Oldham are the best squad in the league with the new signings. Clucas, Stones, Norwood, Monf, Payne should be nowhere near this level. I think if a ball was just to be kicked now, and you looked at all the squads, you would probably say Oldham probably have the strongest squad. And I think most people would have put them in the title race. Now, as the season's progressed so far, I think Oldham have done very well. The question I'm going to ask you, Rob, do you think Oldham are in this title race?
Yeah, absolutely. For the simple reason that I'm not ready to rule them out yet. And there's a lot of teams I'm not ready to rule out. I think the last time we were doing, I don't think it was this podcast, I think it was the Spaces, the jointly hosted Spaces. I was saying anybody who thinks there's only 3 teams in the title race probably wants to give their head a wobble, because there's more. This is going to be the most exciting title race that we've had for many years. In the last few years, we've either had 2 or 1 side break away, haven't we? And last year it was 1 in Chesterfield. The season before it was Notts County and Wrexham going head to head. And it's unquestionably what sort of idiot would rule Oldham out at this stage? I mean, they just wouldn't. They've got an experienced manager who's gone up before. They've got they've got good players. They've got one of, if not so, arguably the strongest squad. I think there's 1 or 2 that I'd pitch against that. I'd pitch the York squad and I'd pitch the Barnet squad against it. And I wouldn't necessarily pitch the Forest Green squad against it, but I'd pitch the Forest Green side. So if they steer relatively clear of injuries, and remember, they could strengthen if they really need to. They're running on one of the lowest number of squads. I think when I last looked, it was about 21, 22 players Forest Green. But yeah, look, let's address the elephant in the room. And that is that at the start of the season, you didn't think Oldham would be in the playoffs. You've eaten humble pie a few times since. You've acknowledged they're better than you thought they were going to be. I'm pretty much sure that I had them down for the playoffs. I still have them very much down for the playoffs. I think it'd be massive failure if they don't make them this year. They really should have made them last year. And yeah, one of definitely 4 teams up undoubtedly in the title race. And there's 3 or 4 others I couldn't rule out of that yet.
When me and Sam actually did our mini show last week to review the first 16 games of the season or so, or the first third or whatever, however you want to put it, I said there were 2 teams involved in the title race. Now, I know you can say I'm probably changing my mind all the time at the moment, which I think everyone does, but for me to be running a podcast and be to doing it, especially when we haven't even had any games, but I look at the signings that Oldham have brought in since, and the time of recording that podcast, the signings hadn't been made, may I add. I'm actually going to say, I reckon York, I've got down to win the title. I think they'll win the title. And I actually think now Oldham will come second. And then I think Forest Green followed by Barnet. That's how I'm going to say it's going to go at the moment. And honestly, I think Forest Green I'm changing my mind all the time because Forest Green had to the final day. But I honestly think now Forest Green will fall away after Christmas. I think they will, because of that small squad as well. I know they can add, and I did mention that on the previous podcast I did. But I think still to have a small squad like that, I can't see them being able to compete with Oldham and York. I reckon Oldham will come second. But I do not. I think whoever doesn't win the league out of Oldham or York, which I think will be the title race for me, won't get promoted through the playoffs, because we've seen it time and time again. I know previously, the last time it happened, I think Notts County got promoted when they came second, but those two, Wrexham and Notts County, were ridiculously better than anyone else in the league. So it wasn't a massive shock to see Notts County go up through the playoffs. This year, for me, if Oldham do not, or York even, do not win the league, I can't see them going up through the playoffs. But I do think one of those sides is going to win the league this season. Now, I said this on the podcast last time I did, and I know at the time I said Barnet aren't involved in the title race. It's something I'm going to stand by. They're simply, you look at some of the games, the big games, they seem to be losing for me. That York game, losing to Solihull, you can't be affording to lose those sort of games. And if you look at the away form, it's simply not good enough to get promoted this season. They've got maximum points at home. They're going to be strong at home all season, but they're not going to be able to get maximum points at home for the entire season. So for me, I can't see Barnet staying in this title race for much longer, in my opinion. I wouldn't
rule them out myself. No way am I ruling Barnet out. Brennan's a crafty character. He wants it very, very badly. If there's one area that Dean Brennan doesn't appear to be learning, it's when he comes up against the really good sides, the really best sides. I think he's hell-bent on scoring more goals than them, but I think in the approach he takes, it's left a little bit open. And there were times before last season, and it happened again to some extent in the FA Cup, didn't it? They scored 3 goals against a Football League team, but they conceded 5, And I know I don't want to cover ground we'll cover when we get on to the predictions, but when we talk about the game they've got this weekend, I think that's a big test for them to prove, for Brennan to prove whether or not he's learned about playing the good sides that have got potency in them, because forgive me, I can't 100% remember. It must have been last season, was it? Or if not, it was late the season before when they played Oldham at home, and Oldham just kept picking them off and scored 3 or 4, didn't they? Fondop with his silly run, his high kicking run, almost taking the mickey at one point, wasn't he? That's a massive game at the weekend, and if I wasn't going to be at one of the other 11 games, that's the game I'd choose to be at or watch, Barnet against Oldham.
Yeah, I think for me, if you see Oldham win that game, they'd go up to 4th, I think, unless they scored 6 goals, which I doubt they're going to do, to be honest, away from home at Barnet. But if they win that game, they'll be level on points with Barnet. For me, this is the thing. If Oldham go and lose that game, everyone's opinion is going to change again and say, typical Oldham, this clearly can't seem to, keep up with it. But for me, I don't know. We'll have to come on to that shortly when we do get onto that game. People will be saying I'm very changing my mind all the time now. I'm kind of bigging Oldham up. But to sign someone like Sam Clucas, I remember going to see Huddersfield when they were in the Premier League, and he played against Huddersfield that time, and he actually played pretty well as well. He's made over 60 appearances in the Premier League. He scored 6 goals as well. Played in the Championship, League One. This guy should not be playing in the National League, no matter what age he's at. I know he's 34 years of age, but he's not a National League player. So for me, that's ridiculous. And even bringing Josh Stone back, did well on loan last season for him to come back as well. The one thing I will say, Sam kind of came out and said something quite controversial, you might say. A lot of Oldham fans give him a lot of stick. They said that the fan base could implode if, let's say, they lose 1 or 2 games, and they got a lot of stick for that. And he said, well, where's your evidence to that? If you think of Oldham recently, when the fans turn, it's not gone down well at Oldham, to be fair, and they've kind of dropped off. And to be fair, I understand his point. In my opinion, I don't think that's going to happen this season overall. That's be what I'd say to that. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot, Rob, so I do apologise for this. Who is your title winner then at the moment?
I mean, I don't mind having a go at it for fun. I was just sat here myself thinking, bless you, bless your heart. It's got to be the naivety of youth that you're picking. You're saying these will finish first, second, third, fourth. I mean, I've been watching this level for 12 years. I've been commentating on it for 8 and summarising before that. And it's the most impossible league to predict. I swear, if you took the odds every Saturday on the 12 games, and from the odds you chose who was going to win or whether it's going to be a draw, it flips its form by more than 50% every week. I can guarantee you there'll be 6 results at least that you weren't expecting. So I'm really reluctant to be pinned at this point. But if you push me at this point, I think I would go for York City.
York City to win the league.
I'll tell you who's done a lot of research on it, and that's Joe Pope from Off the Line blog and from our podcast, NL Fulltime. And he put out a tweet a couple of weeks ago. He took into account 75 different factors and come up with a point weighting and everything else and did it all. So this is going into hundreds of points trying to work out who was going to win the National League. And he had it a hair's breadth between Barnet and York. And I haven't messaged with him about York's signing on loan of David Ajiboye, who's a National League winner with Sutton back in the day. But I would imagine that's tipped it in their favour for him as well. I see your argument for Oldham. I really do. That's an amazing signing. That is an amazing signing. So Ajiboye to York, Clucas to Oldham, and rest assured, before Christmas, New Year, whatever's done, Barnet and Forest Green will bring in another big gun. I mean, you could argue, couldn't you, that Forest Green have shot their shot a little bit earlier by bringing in Quigley and Cardwell. Yeah. But they could well go again with one more big name. Sam Clucas, I was on holiday, I don't know how many years ago it was. I'm going to say 8-9 years ago. I was on holiday in that place everybody goes to in Portugal. Can't think of the name of it now. Begins with A.
Villamora.
Sorry?
Villamora.
No, it'll come to me. But begins with A. But it's where a lot of teams.
It's not Alicante. I might get no. Don't. No, it's not that. It's not that.
Yeah, no, I can't think of something like Albufeira or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was there, and a lot of English teams go over and play their pre-season matches there. And I went over and watched Hull City against I think it was Oxford United in a pre-season friendly. And I can't quite remember the score. I think Oxford were looking to pull off a shock at one point, but Hull turned it round. And the best player on the pitch that day was Sam Clucas. And that was 8 or 9 years ago. He was playing for Hull. And here he is, another big name, another quality player in the National League. And listen, 34's not old these days, not in this world of sports science. You've only got to look at the trees that James Henry's pulling up at Aldershot at 35. A couple of goals in the National League Cup for him the other night. So that's 8 already. And a host of assists as well. Clucas, a slightly different sort of player, but he's a great signing, and he does make you sit up and take note and think, oh, exactly the question you've asked: should we be including Oldham in the title race?
York has come and said hi all. We've also had Mr. Luke who's come in and said, hello gents, no game for us on the weekend, I'm afraid. Great time to rest for our lads and prepare for our game against our bogey side Fylde. 19 on Sunday for me. Get me to the weekend. No pressure. I bet you'll enjoy that one. Well, happy birthday to you. Of course, one of the channel's probably longest subscribers, I have to say, has been in here since the start when we were getting 5 people tuning in live. So I do appreciate you coming in, Mr. Luke, once again tonight. We've had Kevin who's come in and said, good evening, fellas. Welcome to the stream, Kevin. We've had Tom Davis who's actually come in and said, evening all. Oldham will have it wrapped up by March. Here we go. But we've also had Caroline who's come in and said, good evening, Aldershot, an Aldershot fan, of course, and channel member, I may add. Something I will add, I don't know if those who saw my Twitter post, we are announcing another interview that will be announced on Sunday. If you're a channel member, you can message me after the stream and I will let you know who it is we are going to be interviewing, so you do get early access to knowing who we're going to interview, and also you will get a week's early access to that interview when it is announced. So do become a channel member. If you're on a laptop, you can join just £2.99 a month and you can cancel at any time after you've paid the first month. We've also had Paul who's come on tonight, said evening all, and he said York City are delighted to announce the signing of attacking winger David. Can you pronounce that as you're a commentator?
Yeah, David Ajiboye.
Yeah.
David Ajiboye. He's on loan from Peterborough until January, and National League fans will most likely remember him playing for Sutton in the title-winning side.
He's done well, hasn't he, though, at Peterborough? When you look at what he's done, he's made a number of appearances there, and I'm quite shocked to see him drop into the National League once again. And it just shows, when you've got big clubs like York and Oldham in this division, and previously Wrexham and Notts County and Stockport, sides can spend this sort of money and seem to be able to attract players from League One and even the Championship at times. And this lad made over 30 appearances last year for Peterborough, and I saw the comments online, and Peterborough fans were actually sad to see him go and said that we're playing him in the wrong position. Now, if you wanted to get the best out of him, then Adam Hinchelwood will do that, because he knows him from his days at Worthing, and he also knows him from his days at Brighton as well. So for me, this is a perfect signing for him. I think he'll suit York's style. They play, through towards the wings, don't they? And he's a winger himself. So I can only see him thrive, to be honest. And I think this is a great signing for York. What's your thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I remember him doing bits when he was at Sutton. Really exciting player on his day. If you get defensively, if you're coming up against a player of his quality on one wing and similar quality on the other, then you've got real problems, I don't know. I've not followed his journey since Sutton. So, as you rightly say, he made a number of appearances for Peterborough last year. It might well be that the likes of Kwame Poku is keeping him out of the side at the minute, and the young former youth player that's getting in at Peterborough, whose name escapes me, Ricky J. Jones. Yeah, maybe he needs games. Maybe it's one of those loan signings, where he really needs to play himself back into form and fitness, and no better, environment to do that than the National League, where he's done it before and he's proven.
We've also had Ali who's come in tonight. He's actually said, who does Rob support? Now, let me tell you, Rob, he's a working fan, I should say. So if you'd like to tell him, then you can do.
I'm an Aldershot Town fan. I actually commentate on Aldershot for BBC Surrey. And I first went to watch them when I'm 7 years old. And you can do the maths. That was 51 years ago. So it's such an honour and a privilege to get to commentate on the team that I support. Slightly harder is, not so much with the information and the knowledge and the research, which I pride myself on, but just trying to sound as excited when the opposing team score as you can obviously hear in my voice when Aldershot score. And Luke's been sat next to me a couple of times at Halifax, and sadly you've had to taste defeat on both occasions, haven't you, Luke? And hopefully that can change for you at some point when Halifax do come down to the EBB, if you do make that journey, then come and sit with me and Steve Gibbs in the media box and join us, on the fringe of the commentary if you want to.
Yeah, 100%. If I do make the journey down, I have to say, Joe will probably back me up here, because we met him down there because he was commentating with you guys. That night in Aldershot was mental, and probably the best away day of the season last year. We ended up in like a curry house in Aldershot, and it were like gorgeous. I mean, gorgeous, and just the whole night were just class Aldershot fans. Yeah, it was just a good day all round, apart from, of course, the result, which we won't speak about, and hopefully we won't repeat.
If I remember rightly, it was Lauren Tollage in about the 97th minute, wasn't it? Now interesting that talking about Lauren Tollage and Aldershot scorers, RFC Boothie's come in, hasn't he? Aldershot need to sign a goal scorer. I think that's what they're missing this season, is a striker that's going to score between 15 and 20 goals. I think in his pre-match ahead of this weekend's game at home to Wealdstone, Tommy Widrington's admitted the obvious, really, that it doesn't look as if he's got an individual player that's going to score 15 to 20 goals for him this season. Of course, Stokes came mightily close and Tollage smashed that last season. What he has rightfully pointed out is that Aldershot already in November have had more different players score for him this season, and that's a must, really. I've talked in commentary a lot about Hadi Gandor and how hard he battles for the team. He's worth his place in the team. I think the frustrating thing for him and for the Shots fans is that despite those 2 goals on the opening day of the season, he's only managed to get 1 since. He fights so hard for the cause of the team that he's not always in the area where you want him to be, and they're not, they're not creating quite as many chances as last season. They started off doing so, but it's definitely been a tough second full season for Tommy Widrington. But he's a clever guy. He's a smart guy, and he's not one of those that will fall on his sword through complete and utter loyalty to the players he's got. If they don't produce what he wants, needs, and expects, then he will do something about it. Within the constraints of the budget, of course.
100%. And that's something we were discussing a bit the other night, weren't we, Rob, about Aldershot this season. And to be fair, I look at Aldershot and I really like Tommy Widrington as a manager. I think he's a great manager. Did well last season at Aldershot, but I think one thing you might say overall when you look at it, and this isn't me saying this, I think this is what Aldershot fans overall, a section probably think, is the tactics are quite stubborn. He sticks with this way of playing where a very attacking style of football. Now, what I personally think when I look at Aldershot, I think defensively, actually look, and I think you're stronger than last season. In my opinion, I think the individual defensively, you're pretty good. And I didn't think you were that bad. The individuals were that bad last season. I just think the way you played was always going to lead you to conceding goals, because you have such a high line, which is going to leave you vulnerable at times. Whereas this season, you don't have the attack that you had last season. You don't have Tollage, you don't have Stokes, and you were never, to be honest, going to be able to replace those like for like, because it's nearly impossible with those two individuals. So for me, I look at Aldershot this season, and if I was, and obviously I'm a young lad, I'd have no idea if I actually got the role, but if I was Aldershot's manager, for me overall, I would definitely be looking to change the system to a more defensive system and play on the break, because you look at Aldershot at the moment, I think they've scored, 6 goals in 9 games, 1 win in 9 as well. It's crying out, in my opinion, to change the tactics.
Well, it's interesting. As somebody who, I missed them last weekend, of course, but as somebody who watches them, commentates on them most weeks, I think they actually have. I don't think from the outside looking in, people quite realise it's not anywhere near as gung-ho as it was last year. I think in most games we've been defending much, much better. We are a bit of a hard luck story in terms of some of the goals that have been conceded. I think, again, in his pre-match ahead of this weekend's game, Tommy said it's a bit harsh at the minute because we feel we're not far off it in terms of the way we're playing, but our chances aren't quite going in, and it feels like we're getting punished for the odd little, kind of mishap that we make, and that's always the battle, of course, in football. I'd agree with you that Aldershot have much stronger defenders this season. But one thing I'd have to say are mitigating circumstances. I don't know if you realise this, but Luke Jenkins been out for 2 months now. Ollie Harfield's out for the season. They are two players that would start week in, week out for Aldershot in the defence, and they've not been available. Christian Maghomer, okay, through his own poor tackle, has just missed 3 games. He's come back in now. They've done really well to still get 3 defenders out there. To be honest, over the last month, if they'd have lost one more centre-back, they would have had to have changed, I think. Even Aaron Jones, who's normally a wing-back or a right-back, has been playing on the right side of the centre-backs. Now, hopefully Jenkins isn't too far away. We're very unlikely to see Ollie Harfield this season. And that's a guy who's Aldershot's pretty much player of the year in the England seaside, played every minute of every game. And we're missing him and his ability to get out of defence and get forward and create chances as well. So, listen, as an overall thing, as an Aldershot Town fan, am I panicking at the moment? No, not at all. Aldershot are in the position, budget-wise, roughly where they should be. They're on a par for where they should be with the budget. Did they overachieve last season? Yes. Are they struggling to match up to last season? Yes. Do I rule them out and think they'll be in a relegation fight? I hope not. I do appreciate they're not too far from that. And we'll come on to the weekend's game. I think they've got a massive game at home to Wealdstone coming up. They're 6 points clear of them at the moment. That could be cut to 3 if they lose in the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Overall, I look at Aldershot's side and I look at the sides below, and I think there's a massive gap in quality compared to Aldershot's squad, compared to the sides below, and a few above you, to be fair. So I can't see Aldershot being in a relegation battle. I just can't see you pushing for the playoffs. Overall, I look at the squad this season, and I think it's good enough to make a push for the playoffs. For me, no. And maybe if defenders were back, I knew obviously Harfield was injured, because I think he got injured at Halifax, didn't he, for the season? And maybe if you had those defences back and you played a more defensive style, I personally feel overall Aldershot will be a lot higher up the league. But I just can't. I don't think that's something that Aldershot will be prepared to do under Widrington, in my opinion. But we've had Chris, who's come in, and he said, "Evening, gents. Hope you're both well. Heat fan here, making the trip to the AFC File this weekend. Got a horrid record there, but a good chance to end that on Saturday." Gateshead seem to have a lot of bogey teams, don't they, in a way? I know Halifax is another one, yet to beat us in my entire lifetime, and some. And then we've had Christopher, who's also come in and said, "Rob, will you be making the long trip to Gateshead for next weekend's game?"
Yes, I will. Obviously, we hope it's a dry day, yeah? Yeah, rain in Gateshead and all that. But yeah, I will. It's not too bad a journey for me. For the Shots fans coming up from North East Hampshire, it's a good 5-hour journey. For me, it's about 3.5, because I actually live in Cambridgeshire. I live on the A1. So yeah, I haven't finalised whether I'm driving or getting the train just yet. That'll depend if the trains are playing ball or not. But yes, I'm coming. I'll be honest with you, it's not my favourite place to go, and that's largely because I'm a commentator. And it's an athletics track around the pitch, which puts that extra distance and makes player recognition that little bit harder. And also, of course, as we all know, it affects the atmosphere. The atmosphere at Gateshead v Aldershot last season was pretty noisy, pretty feisty. And I think those with long memories will remember exactly why that was. Whether any of that needle will carry on to this season, I don't know. But that'll be a tough one for Shots. And it's a good point he's made. The previous messenger had made about Gateshead form filed. I've already written down my prediction, and I'm not going to change it now. But I think they'll be fine there this weekend, because the one thing filed haven't managed to do since Kevin Phillips come in is, keep goals out of their net. And I'll tell you what, when you can't keep goals out of your net, you don't want to play Gateshead.
Mm-hmm. We're certainly probably coming to a point where we can get onto the predictions then. These are the scores on the doors, everyone. 82 points to 77. I've started to pull away a little bit. I was very concerned when I brought someone on that analyses the division, last week in Sam, that he were going to absolutely batter me. Fortunately, you might say fortunately, some might say it's class. I've managed to hold my own, and I've managed to keep the gap. Managed to, stay in front. The gap is now extended to 5 points. It was 4 points last week. Rob's always beaten me every time, so it's certainly going to be an interesting one. Are you pretty confident once again?
I'm never confident predicting scores or results in the National League because, with respect to other people out there who may know more of football than I do, I've been living and breathing the National League, as I said, for 12 years now. I mean, there isn't a team that's been in it longer than Aldershot, so I've been watching it as long as anybody. And in terms of, association with the football club. So I'm not going to say that I'm confident. I think that would be a bit stupid. The only thing I will say is when I came on last about 5 or 6 weeks ago, I'm pretty sure you were 5 ahead of Paul. And after that weekend's predictions, Paul was within a point, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So yeah, it's certainly going to be an interesting one tonight.
Yeah, I'll see. I don't know if Paul's managed to tune in from his sickbed or not, but Paul, if and when you watch this, I'll do my best for you again, mate, and hopefully we can close that gap on Luke and just stop him from getting a little bit too cocky.
Yeah, I don't want to be wearing a Rochdale shirt at the end of the season, but fortunately at the moment I'm pretty confident. I shouldn't say that, but I'm fairly confident that I won't be doing as long as I don't keep bringing you on. And I have to say, Rob, if you beat me this week, this is the last time you'll be coming on the podcast for a set of predictions. You can come on once again, but you won't be doing predictions. Let's put it this way. Paul,
to be fair, I did.
Yeah.
Just quickly, sorry. To be fair, I did reach out to Paul on X this evening and said, do you want to send me your scores and I'll present them for you? Or he said, no, go with yours, Rob.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. But no, we'll get on to the predictions then. Also, I should give a shout out to Paul's company, PTF Travel. If you look at them on Twitter and if you have any holidays that you're wanting to book, if your team's not doing very well and you want to get away, then that's the place to go to organise any travel. Also, if your team's not doing so well, you might want to get away and forget about the football. If you're doing well, so you might want to celebrate. Get your holidays booked through them. So we're at a point now where we can get on to the predictions. First game then, ironically, Aldershot versus Wealdstone. Now this for me is a big game, in my opinion. I think it's got the potential to be a very good one. You look at Aldershot, 1 win in 9, 6 goals scored in those 9 games. You look at Wealdstone, just gone to Grimsby, won there, beat Braintree, then got a point at Ebbsfleet. You look at Aldershot, obviously out of form at the moment, but you look at Wealdstone as a side that's not won away from home in the league yet. I think for Aldershot, if you're wanting to get back to winning ways, you look at the table and you say this is the sort of game that you want. But if you look at it recently and look at Wealdstone just knocking Grimsby out of the FA Cup, it's not a good time to be playing Wealdstone. And I think Wealdstone will be pretty confident into this game. I'm actually going to back them. Alex Reid obviously scoring now for them. He must be the most prolific striker in the division at the moment. I'm actually going to say Wealdstone 2-1. I do apologise for that. How do you see it going?
Well, first of all, on Wealdstone, I want to say what a great few weeks for them. I don't think anybody saw it coming. Everybody was predicting the axe for Matty Taylor, weren't they? And, they've started to pull it round. And I think it's absolutely hand in hand with the signing of Alex Reid, who not only is a good striker, but he's a striker that has always scored at this level, and he's a striker who's got a point to prove. You talked about him in Oldham a little while earlier. For those who don't know or have forgotten, he kind of fell out, didn't he? He lost face, if you like, at Oldham when he put out a tweet from the dressing room saying they'd had to come in for training on Christmas Day, and it's all kind of unravelled a little bit from there, and his face hasn't quite fit. I think there's a number of Oldham fans who do rate him, but maybe they didn't feel he was being used in the best way that he could. So I massively respect what Wealdstone are doing. And I think it'll be a really tight, tense and close game on Saturday. I've been very much between a 1-1 draw and a narrow win for Aldershot of 2-1. And I'm going to go with the 2-1 Aldershot Town win. I'm not blasé about it at all. I think Tommy Widrington and Aldershot and the Aldershot fans really, really need a win right now. I don't think they've been playing terribly, but they've perhaps just lacked a little bit of a spark. And I also note that despite the wonderful football that Wealdstone have played at times over the last few years, that Aldershot have just started to get the victories at the EBB against them in the last couple of seasons as well. So I'm taking that into account, and I literally have wrestled between the 1-1 and the 2-1, but I'm gonna stick with my boys and say 2-1 Aldershot.
I actually didn't go 2 when I went 1-0, and I'm going to go 1-0. So I'm changing my prediction there to Wealdstone. That is, I do apologise. Get your predictions in, guys, and we'll put them on the screen as well if you want to play along. 3 points for getting the result exactly correct. So if I say 1-0 Wealdstone and they win 1-0, I'll get 3 points. But if Wealdstone go and win 2-0, then I only get 1 point. And if Aldershot win that game, then I get 0 points. So that's how it works, guys. So if you want to play along, you can do that. Next game, then, another big game in the National League. Big crowd expected. I think nearly 8,000 inside the linear. Hartlepool bringing a strong following, considering their position. We haven't really touched on it tonight. Of course, Lenny Lawrence, it's been announced that he's going to be the permanent manager now until the end of the season. Of course, he's done well so far. 4 games unbeaten for them. Like I've said, and I'm sticking with it, I think Hartlepool are a side that I could see climbing up the league. Is it the most ambitious appointment for me? No. But like we've said, and I know you've spoke on it before, Rob, you look at Hartlepool at the moment, you look at their position and how many really, really ambitious appointments could have Hartlepool made at the moment, because there isn't many managers out there, in my opinion, who are actually available. I don't know what your thoughts were on that.
Well, first and foremost, Lenny Lawrence has probably managed more games than the majority of the rest of the National League managers put together. He's very experienced. He knows what he's doing. He's also recognised that perhaps day to day he needs where he's a bit weaker, particularly possibly as well because of his age. He wants a younger head coach, and he's appointed one in Anthony Limbrick, who's got a good record working with youngsters in the past. Didn't quite get the results that he wanted when he was at Woking, of course. But when I was up at Hartlepool a couple of weeks ago, speaking to the BBC Tees guys, and also Craig Hignett, who was up there co-commentating Hartlepool through and through, I said, what's the score with Lawrence? Do you think that this time maybe he wants it? He says, yeah, I think he does. He held the fort last time. Now he's taken charge. He's had a really steady start. I loved what he did against Aldershot. I mean, I didn't enjoy it at the time, but he made them. They were already, to be fair, quite difficult to break down out of possession. They kind of got that under Saal, but he said, no, the players we've got here are good enough to get the ball down and play. And he brought Adam Campbell into the little pocket just to keep the ball moving. Di Sarue had a cracking day that day. They were hard to make chances against, and they scored 2 out of probably 6 or 7 really good chances. It was almost the perfect performance that day. And that's why they've given me an awful lot of trouble for this prediction, Luke. Funnily enough, for totally different reasons, I've been between 2-1 York and 1-1. I feel that Hartlepool right now could go to York, which obviously is not a local derby, but for those two sides, they're near enough their nearest games. Yeah. Obviously, York are nearer to Halifax, I get that. But for Hartlepool, York's, along with Gateshead, their nearest game. York have got a lot of momentum. They've got a great manager. They've got many more ways in which they could score. So I'm really struggling with this one. I wish it was coming up much later in the predictions, but I'm going to continue with the theme. I'm just going to go for a 2-1 home win to York, but I really wouldn't be surprised if it was a draw.
I've gone for a draw for this game. And York fans were just saying that I wanted to get back at them for them beating us in the last minute. But I have to say on that day, and I know sides aren't going to turn up every single game. I understand that, and they got the 3 points, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. And I stand by that. It's true, and I think sides who go on to win the title, which I am backing York to win the title, win those sort of games when they're not particularly playing well. But for me, they're due a defeat. I don't think they're due to drop points, sorry. I don't particularly think they played that well at Halifax. And I feel Hartlepool aside for me that I could see going on a bit of a run. Like I said, I think they're in a false position. You look at the Hartlepool squad, and I think it's a fairly strong squad that should be well up the league than higher up the league than where the position that they're in at the moment. And for me, I just think, they're bringing a strong following away from home. I could see Hartlepool getting something here, so I'm actually going to go for a 1-1 draw for this game. So that's my prediction for that game. We'll move on to the next.
That's good, actually.
Yeah. We'll move on
just to the next. That's really good because I was between those two scores. I'm glad that we've just gone for something different. It makes it more fun, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, it certainly does. Moving on to the next game then now, Fylde versus Gateshead. Fylde, of course, I think have the joint worst defence in the division alongside Ebbsfleet. Gateshead, I think, have got one of the strongest attacks. 28 goals scored for them so far this season. I know Fylde are a bogey team, but I can only see one winner for this game. I'm going to go for a 3-1 Gateshead win. How do you see it going?
Well, I'm a bit gutted, actually, because that's exactly the same score that I've gone for. You can never bet on Fylde not scoring a goal, can you? And I mean, I think what'll be interesting to see is how the land lays now with Nick Horton. Of course, Kevin Phillips come in and pretty quickly dropped him, didn't he, to the bench, which I think can only be about making a statement that I'm in charge here. I call the shots, not you. He also surely wouldn't cut his nose off to spite his face and not play a player of that quality, Kev Phillips. I think maybe his idea is that he wants to make them better out of possession. And the problem for Fylde out of possession is that because Horton plays a free role wherever he wants to find those little pockets of space, he's not always where he should be or where they can depend on him to be defensively. I don't know if that is the issue, but it could well be. But let's not debate it too much more. I'm not going to change my mind. I'll tell you what I will do. Will it make any difference to the points if I say 4-1? Do you get extra points? Yeah. Sorry?
Yeah, it would do, because if, let's say, Gateshead won 4-1, I'd get 1 point because I said 3-1 and you'd get 3 points.
Okay, I'll go with 1-4 then.
Brilliant. Right, we'll move on to the next game then now. Most people, of course, are backing Gateshead in the comments. Moving on to the next game then, Boston versus Dagenham. For me, you look at Dagenham in the FA Cup, I think they're a very good side for me. Another side a bit like Hartlepool. I think a side that are capable of getting the playoffs. I think the issue for Dagenham, and like I keep repeating, I'm like a broken record with them, is just consistency. And this is the type of game that, to be fair, Dagenham this season and over the last couple of seasons would drop points against. But I feel that they're going to go on to win this game. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Dagenham win. Boston yet to win at home. It's going to come at some point for them, but I think Dagenham, if they turn up, they're a lot better side than Boston. And the attack that Dagenham have clearly got with the likes of Pereira, Moraes, will be too much for them. So I'm actually going to back Dagenham to win 2-1. How do you see it going?
Well, for the third time in 4 games, I was between a 1-1 draw and a 2-1 away win, and I went for a 1-1 draw. So again, we've flipped on this one. Yeah. My reasons for saying that Boston might get a draw. They've said goodbye to a manager that hasn't won at home, sadly, despite getting promotion last year in something like 14, 15 games. They've got a temporary management team in place, but they made a good call for me in the week. They went very, very strong with their team in the National League Cup in desperation, if you like, to just get the monkey off their back with a home win. And they got it. They got the win in the National League Cup. Now, of course, a lot of our viewers are going to say, National League Cup, what does that mean? What it means is a run out for players who don't necessarily, maybe due some match minutes or an opportunity for a side to build its confidence. And I think that's what Boston did in the week. I also think it's very, very difficult for Dagenham and for Ben Strevens. And I know this because Aldershot have done it 4 times now, 3 this season and 1 towards the end of last season, against sides that have just kissed goodbye to their manager or just appointed a new one. And they're hell to try and win those games. They really are. Am I going to be so bold as to predict a Boston win? No, I'm going for the 1-1.
Eastleigh versus Braintree then. Braintree, of course, in the drop zone at the moment. Eastleigh out of form themselves. We speak about the sides that are underperforming. I've spoke about Hartlepool. I think Eastleigh, a lot of people had mixed opinions about them at the start of the season. They tend to be pretty strong at home. I personally feel that Eastleigh will be able to get back to winning ways in this one against Braintree. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Eastleigh win. How do you see it going?
Yeah, we're going to agree on the result. The score, slightly different. Braintree, I think, have proven they're pretty adept defensively. They don't tend to concede too many goals. Even in the FA Cup, that one was 0-0, wasn't it, last week? And then it went to penalties against Brackley. Eastleigh, a nightmare team to predict. One, because they're probably as inconsistent as Dagenham that you mentioned before, and 2, because of that quandary that I always have with them, that they could have a poor game, but if Paul McCallum's in the mood, they could still win a game, Yeah. I'm just going to go for a slightly narrower one, a 1-0 to Eastleigh, and that's no disrespect to Braintree, who I still think will come better this season. Mm-hmm. I don't quite know why it's not working for them in terms of goal scoring. I mean, I'd give my right arm for one of their 2 strikers. Well, any one of the 3, actually. Kindy, Effiong, back, of course. Or even young Lisby. The kind of striker, definitely 2 of them, maybe all 3 of them, that I'd love to pluck one of them out and stick it in Aldershot's side.
Yeah, I think I'd be the same with Vinny Effiong in particular. He's a player, I think, that'll probably, I think, when you looked at Braintree's marquee signing in the summer, that gave them all the attention. Because they did bring in a lot of players, Braintree. I think everyone knows. I think it were 16 players, something silly like that they brought in. The majority of the squad weren't there last season. You can't put it down to age, I don't think, either. You've seen how prolific Vinny Effiong's been in previous clubs, the amount of clubs he's been at. He seems to have done it at most clubs. I think the only club I can remember where he's kind of struggled and it's not gone to plan was when he was at Notts County. And I thought him going to Braintree there. He knows a lot of the players who are there. I thought he'd thrive there, and he seems to have struggled so far for Braintree. But I do expect him to start scoring at some point. And I am with you on that one. I do think Braintree will be able to survive. Defensively, they're pretty strong. And the goals will come at some point because they've got too many players going forward not to be able to score enough goals to survive, in my opinion. So I think Braintree will be fine, but I think Eastleigh will have too much in this game. So we'll move on to the next game then now. My side, Halifax versus Woking, who are in a bit of free fall at the moment. Halifax must be determined to get back to winning ways. We've had 2 results now. Where they could have arguably won both games, at least got a point, I think, in both of them. Losing to Rochdale away from home, they probably deserve more, and I'd say the same about the York game. So I think the players will be determined to get back to winning ways in this one against a Woking side that are struggling, and have only got 1 win away from home all season, which did actually come against Ebbsfleet, who, of course, sit bottom at the moment. I think, for me, overall, you'd like to think we can get back to winning ways. I'm going to back us to win this one. I think we'll win 2-0. That's my prediction for this one. How do you see it going?
Exactly the same as the last game. You've gone for a 2-0 home win. I've gone for a 1-0 home win. I agree with you. I think Halifax have been a bit more expansive of late, but the results haven't really shown it. And I think they're due a result. It's always a tough place to go. It will be tough again for Woking on Saturday. A few sides have managed to go to the Shay this season and win, and Woking will certainly go there with that belief. But I always like to back Halifax for a clean sheet, And I think they'll get it. I think they'll get the win that's been coming and win 1-0.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. We'll move on to the next game then. We will have a look at Maidenhead versus Forest Green. And I know the trend seems to be with Maidenhead, they seem to do better against the better teams. And I genuinely think this might be a little bit different. If you look at Forest Green, the way they play, they're not a possession-based side. They're a side that will allow the other side to have the ball and will be able to catch them on the break. So it'll be quite interesting, this one, because I don't think that's going to suit Maidenhead at all. I'm going to go for... it's hard one to predict. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Forest Green win for this game. I think they'll be able to win. Forest Green clearly on form at the moment. I think they'll be in this title race for a period of time. And like I said, I think they'll drop off at some point when injuries start to hit them, which I'm sure they will, because they seem to hit most teams. How do you see it going?
Well, I've got quite a clear vision of this one. Forest Green away from home. They're a real force to be reckoned with. Look at their away form. Look at their away points for this season. And I will say that it's going to be a new experience for them. I haven't looked at my years, but I'm thinking that Maidenhead have been up at this level for a good, 5, 6, 7 seasons now, haven't they? And it's probably slightly before that Forest Green went up. So I'm not sure if they've clashed at York Street before or not. So it will be a strange experience for Forest Green, but they've got the experience. They've got experience right through their side, and they're good and they're confident away from home. So I think they'll win comfortably as well. I was going to go 1-2 as well, but just for the sake of keeping these predictions slightly different, I'm going to go 1-3.
Rochdale versus Sutton. I think Rochdale will be the strong favourites going into this game. However, they've not particularly played well as of late. I think most Rochdale fans can agree that they were very fortunate against Halifax, didn't particularly play well. They've since lost to Barnet, and prior to the Halifax game, they lost to Southend. Sutton are it's a massive contrast to the way Rochdale play. Sutton are a big physical side, and something I have noticed about Rochdale this season is when the midfield's matched or the midfield's slightly stronger, they really do struggle, and it's happened on a few occasions this season for Rochdale, and I think it is a bit of a banana skin. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. I think both sides are capable of scoring goals, so yeah, I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw for this game. How do you see it going?
Well, I was between a 2-2 and a 2-1 Sutton win, so you've helped me make up my mind. I'll be contrary about it and change mine. You know that I really like and rate Rochdale, but they've lost a little bit of momentum. They've got 1 or 2 injuries as well. And do you know what? I'm going to take you back to that Spaces that we did, the last one we did, whenever it was, kind of 10 days ago. And the Rochdale fan came on, and he talked about how he hated the way they played, trying to play out from the back. And he said, and he described what we all see in most matches, to be honest, which is at some point where the defence pass it, they shift it across the back, and then they move it back the other way. And he said they do it so slow, and teams just pick them off and score against them. And I don't know if our viewers saw the Rochdale game in the FA Cup against Bromley on Saturday, but that's exactly what happened for the. I think it was the first of the second goal anyway, and Bromley roared off into a lead. They ended up pulling their way back into it, didn't they? And Bromley got a late winner, 4-3. But Sutton are the sort of side I think that will pounce on those kind of errors. And I think maybe just they go into it in slightly better shape than Rochdale at the minute. Tight game, any 1 of 3 results possible, but I'm going to go Rochdale 1, Sutton 2.
Solihull versus Altrincham then. I think this is 8th versus 9th. Solihull, I've got quite high expectations for this season. I did at the start, and I still am backing them to comfortably finish inside the playoffs. I think they're a very good side. Of course, lost that last game to Gateshead. Altrincham, to be fair, they're a side for me. I'm not particularly sold on this season, I'll be honest. Yet they're still 9th. Losing Conclar, Con Clark, sorry, not Con Clark. Con Clark in the summer was a significant loss. I think most people can understand that, and I don't think many people expected them to do as well as last season. When you lose a player like that, it's always hard to find a replacement, and it's something I don't think Altrincham have been able to do. And I don't think they expected to do that. I think the way Altrincham wanted to go was to allow other players to get more goal contributions so far this season. And to be fair, I think Altrincham have done very well to sit in ninth, but they've been very inconsistent. I am going to back Solihull to win this game 3-0. I think they're a strong side, Solihull, and I think they'll finish inside the playoffs this season. For me, Altrincham overall, I think lower mid-table. Mid-table, actually, not lower mid-table, come the end of the season. Like I said, I'm not particularly sold on them this season. Not particularly sure why. I just think going forward, maybe they're a bit weaker than they were last season, and I think that'll be their downfall, why they won't finish inside or make a push for the playoffs this year. How do you see it going, Rob?
Well, firstly, I rate Altrincham higher than you do. Mm-hmm. I would be really shocked if they don't finish in the top half. Are they certs for the playoffs? No. But I think they'll finish somewhere between 7th and 10th. That's where I'd have them. I'm actually finding it quite difficult to predict this game. Solihull are definitely in a little bit of form right now, aren't they? And they came through a tricky game in the FA Cup. We probably didn't mention them earlier, but they saw off Maidstone, and we all know how well Maidstone did last year. I'm between the draw and a home win, and as consistent as I've been trying to just give slightly different predictions to you, I'm going to go with the draw. I think Regan Linney is a quality player that perhaps hasn't produced it week in, week out, but I think he's starting to produce it more often. I think they'll get a draw, 1-1.
Moving on to the next game then, Southend versus Yeovil, two sides that are particularly strong defensively. Yeovil, another side that have gone under the radar. For me personally, I can't see them keeping it up and being in the playoffs. I do believe they're playing out of the skin a little bit. Southend, a side that are starting to come into a little bit of form now. Of course, Pepple's come in and seems to be that missing piece in the jigsaw going forward. I think they're a good team for me, a side that I think will be in the top half come the end of the season. It was a hard one to predict, though, this game. Yeovil bang on form at the moment and becoming a very, very hard side to beat. I am going to back Southend to win this game narrowly. I'm actually going to go for a 1-0 Southend win with them being at home. How do you see it going?
I found it tough again as well. I do respect the form that Yeovil are in. But funny enough, at the beginning of that run was when they came back and had a decent second half against Aldershot and got themselves a point when they were played off the park in the first half. And I note that Southend have been keeping the ball lovely, knocking it around forever, and their fans are getting slightly frustrated that they're just not scoring that much. And I think they've taken the handbrake off a little bit. Last week, 3 goals, wasn't it, against Charlton? I just think that whilst both sides, neither side are in bad form, I think Southend will score a couple of goals. Yeovil probably have got a goal in them as well. So 2-1 Southend.
Tamworth v Ebbsfleet then. Ebbsfleet's last chance to kind of get everyone together to be able to survive. For me personally, I think they are down. They're projected, I think I worked this out, to get 20 points come the end of the season. The only side, I think, in the past decade that have got less than that was Dover, who had a minus 12 points deduction. For me, for this one, it's a hard one to predict. You look at Tamworth winning in the FA Cup, a massive, massive win for them. Respect to them. Will it be Ebbsfleet? It's a hard one. I don't understand why. I'm going to allow you to go first.
Yes, they will. Yeah, not the place that Ebbsfleet want to go right now. The atmosphere around that place, the FA Cup fever, undoubtedly the result of the round for the National League teams. And the good news for them is they're not back on the pitch, Tamworth, 2 or 3 days later and having an after the Lord Mayor's show type scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Tonks is going to end up with a statue outside that ground at Tamworth because he's literally a cult hero. I don't know if you heard it, but we managed to get him on the podcast last week with talking to Dickie, which was brilliant. If you're Ebbsfleet right now, if you're Harry, I can't think of his surname. Watkins? No, it's not. Yeah. Is it Harry? Anyway, Harry, the Ebbsfleet manager. Watling, yeah. Harry Watling.
Watling. Yeah,
it's the last place you want to go right now. And do you know what? I don't know how bold the Ebbsfleet chairman's going to be, but this could be another unwanted beating for Ebbsfleet, and a little bit nearer the trapdoor for Harry Watling. I think Ebbsfleet's chances of staying up are slim anyway, but I believe, as daft as it sounds, that the only chance they've got is to change managers again. And I apologise, I don't know Harry Watling personally. I couldn't remember his surname. I apologise for that as well. But I'm going to go for Tamworth 3, Ebbsfleet 1.
I feel sorry for Harry Watling coming into that side. I think it's been difficult for him. I don't think he could particularly do much. Hasn't really had an opportunity to bring in a full, fresh amount of players, who he knows. I know he's brought in 1 or 2 of his own players who seem to look like good signings on paper. Although I think you look at them and they're aging players overall. But on paper, they look like quite good defenders. In Stewart coming in. And the other name's gone out of my head, who he signed from the Scottish League. For me, overall, I look at Tamworth, that long throw. How will Ebbsfleet be able to deal with that? I can't see them being able to deal with it. I'm going to back Tamworth to win narrowly. I'm going to go for a 1-0 win. But I kind of understand why he said you need to sack him. And I think that's something that Ebbsfleet will have to do, because obviously if they're needing to survive, something needs to change. And there's not many things you can do now. But I would have to feel sorry for Harry Watling having to come into that environment. He hasn't particularly got the new manager bounce that Ebbsfleet wanted and he wanted. But to be honest, I genuinely feel the side is that poor. I don't think many managers will be able to keep this Ebbsfleet side up, unfortunately. So I'm going to back Tamworth to win 1-0. And final game then that we will have a look at. Game of the game week, I think we've both agreed. Barnet versus Oldham. 3rd versus 5th. I'll allow you to go first then on this one. I've got my prediction wrote down here.
Yeah, well, to be perfectly honest, I've listened to you tonight and you've reduced Barnet to 4th runners in the title race and you've, pushed Oldham up a little bit. I know you obviously, think York will do well as well. But this isn't going to define the title race, is it? But it's going to give us some clues. It's going to give us some pointers. Can Barnet come out on top in one of these types of games? Or will Oldham go there and do what they did to them last time? I tell you what, I've been between a 2-2 draw and a 2-3 on this one. There's going to be goals in this game, I'm sure. Do you want to give me an inkling which way you've gone? Because I might, just to keep it fun, I might go. What have you gone for the Oldham win?
I've got neither. I've gone for a draw for this game.
Right. Okay. Well, I was between the 2-2 and the 2-3. So I'm sorry, Barnet fans. I'm going to go 2-3. Oldham just with a little bit of momentum right now. Barnet will always score. They always score, but they just got beat 5-3, and I'll go for Oldham to win by the odd goal in 5. At least the Oldham fans will like me, or would they rather that we tip them not to win?
To be fair, I think, was it last season when Mickey Mellon came in? I think this was one of his first games for Oldham when they played Barnet, and they did an absolute job on Barnet last season. They played them on the break. Fondop was brilliant that night, but also amusing at the same time. I think we can all remember that running style that he did. I think for this game as well, I was either going to go for an Oldham win or I was going to go for a draw. So I've gone for a draw for this game. I don't know why, but I can see it being quite low scoring. I've gone for a 1-1 draw. I think the sides could cancel each other out. like I've said, Barnet are due to drop points. They've got maximum points at home this season, which is brilliant for them, I think, overall. I think the away form has been the reason why they're not top at the moment. And that's something they need to rectify. But there's going to come a time when they do drop points at home. And I think against an Oldham side that are banging form, have just gone to Tranmere and won. I can see it being this game. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw for this game. And I think that wraps up the predictions. I'll certainly be watching this one. I think it is going to be televised. So after the Halifax match, I'll be watching this game because it's certainly going to be one that's going to catch a lot of eyes, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I won't get to see it because I'm going to try something a little ambitious on Saturday. Aldershot against Wealdstone is a 12:30 kickoff, isn't it? I'm going to hotfoot it 3 or 4 miles down the road, try and get there for 3 or just after, and watch Farnborough against Slough in the National League South. Farnborough obviously flying pretty high in the National League South at the moment, and Slough too doing really well under Scotty Davies. I'm not sure if Scotty Davies will be playing himself because he got that sending off, didn't he, recently? I'm not quite sure where they are with that one, but yeah, it'll be good to see Scotty. It'll be good to have a look at Farnborough, and yeah, hopefully I'm well entertained in the Aldershot Wealdstone game. But if I'm still in need of a bit of entertainment, then I've got 2 chances of it on Saturday.
Well, I'll hope to be entertained. Maybe I'm more hopeful win, to be honest, with Halifax at the moment. I'm not bothered about entertainment. I just wanted to see us get back to winning ways because I think over the last 2 games we deserved so much more than what we got. I think defensively, errors cost us, to be honest, marking, etc. in those 2 games. So I am pretty confident we can get back to winning ways against Woking. Thank you to everyone that's tuned in tonight. We had some great numbers once again. Cheers for everyone that's got involved and interacted. If you would like to like and subscribe, then please do that. Liking gets it out to more people. Subscribing grows the community. And if you want to become a member, it's just £2.99 a month. And you will see the benefits to that come the end of the stream. There's going to be a little video that will come up of a little trailer of a interview that we're going to be bringing out, and it will be exclusive to members for the first week. And if you are a member and you want to know who we're interviewing, then you can message me on the social media and I will tell you who we're interviewing. For those who aren't members, won't know till Sunday, and then they'll have to wait over a week to see that interview, whereas members will get early access as well. You can also use custom emojis in the live chat and all that stuff as well. Rob, once again, thank you for joining me so much. I do appreciate you coming in. Of course, Paul's not been able to make it this time once again, but hopefully he'll be back next week to do the predictions. And hopefully you will not be back if you beat me again.
And you may or may not be having a haircut as well.
Yeah.
Just to say, though, for the listeners that Luke and I will be having our own double header this week, because obviously we've united tonight for this podcast, and all being well, everybody healthy, then we'll be back to do the Twitter Spaces, won't we, on Sunday evening, usually around about 8:30. Look out for that one. Of course,
it's under your little your name tag there, non-league NL full time, I should say. Would you like to give that a shout out before we bring things to a close?
Yeah, a podcast that has been going for 8 years. It covers the 3 national leagues. So we cover the South and the North as well. And it comes out normally on a Sunday evening or a Monday morning. The latest episode features a roundup of all the FA Cup action last weekend. And that interview that I referred to earlier with Tom Tonks, who played his part in Tamworth Tonkin the Terriers.
Yeah. You rescued that one there, to be fair. But no, thanks for coming on, Bob. I do appreciate it once again. Also, massive thanks to our sponsors at Cards Accepted. Use the link in the description and get 50% off your order. And we will see you next week. Bye for now.